Welcome to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. This is episode 7.
Hey y'all. Yep, I'm still at my parents' house. It's Wednesday, April 28th at 8:07 p.m. The sun's gone down. Birds are still awake for some reason. I don't know if you can hear the birds and the crickets at the same time. But a quick side note. I may have mentioned this before, but because of all my weird sleep disorders, I never dream. Well, I either never dream or never remember that I dreamed, you know? Either way, it feels like I never dream. But last night, it was just nightmare after nightmare after nightmare. And I don't want to get into it because some of it was extremely disturbing. But I still feel worried about it. I still feel anxious about it. 20 hours later, it's like something's still hanging over my head. I will make one exception to all the horrible dreams I had last night. I'll tell you about one of them in just a minute. But I want to include all of this for my records, and of course, so you can have all the information, related or not related. Anyway, earlier today I talked to my friend Tom, who lives in New Jersey, about all the stuff that happened when I was a kid, and me visiting my parents and asking them for their memories, and I told him about all the new stuff that's been happening at my apartment. And Tom was nice about it, but I could tell he was fishing around to make sure I hadn't completely snapped. And then that got into my head again, and I started to overthink it. And it's a funny thing. If you are trying to convince someone that you are not crazy, the last thing on earth you should do is act like somebody who's trying to prove they're not crazy. The more you try to prove you're not crazy, the more crazy you sound. But, you know, luckily he didn't call a paddy wagon and have me hauled off, so I guess that worked. Tom did suggest, however, that, you know, I've had a lot of pressure at work lately, and I've got the crazy sleep issues, and I got a poor diet, and there's been a pandemic going on, and all that may have conspired together to cause me to see things that weren't there. He quoted some WebMD thing about sleep deprivation and stress and how it could do all kinds of things to your body and mind. And did you know it can even cause someone to hallucinate? In spite of all this, it's actually been kind of fun recording all this, going back into my memories, digging up stuff, talking to my parents about stuff that happened when I was a kid. Of course, I would never talk to them about the stuff that's going on now. They might actually call a padded wagon if I did that. And I guess if my life was more interesting, I would record more or really try writing, you know? But it doesn't matter. None of this makes my current circumstances any better. When I first started recording, as I may have mentioned, I wanted to document what was going on. Maybe I would have a Conjuring blockbuster movie on my hands and I could get rich. Or maybe I could record my descent into insanity, and that would also be interesting. But at least for the moment, I have decided what all of this is. For now. At least, for this moment, I believe that I have not lost my mind, but instead that these spirits this haunting, this activity, whatever, is real. Not only because my parents have that very similar recollection when it comes to my story and what happened when I was a kid, but the two reasons that really convinced me that this is real happened over the last 48 hours. First of all, 2 nights ago, Sunday night, actually that was the night I last recorded. After I recorded, went to sleep. I woke up in the early morning hours, and it was raining like it usually does here where my parents live. It was still dark outside. It was about, 3 o'clock in the morning or so. And it's usual for me to wake up for a minute and look at the clock and then drift off back to sleep. Except this time when I woke up, my socks were soaking wet. I'd gone to bed with my socks on because my parents like to keep the house chilly for some reason, and wanted to keep my feet warm. I wore them to bed, and now my socks were completely drenched. And yeah, it was raining outside. And sure, there could be a hole in the ceiling right above my socks, but why did it only rain on my socks? Why aren't the sheets wet, or my shirt, or my pants, or anything else in the room? Everything else is bone dry. Just my socks are completely drenched. They're soaking wet. I mean, that's odd, right? I took off my socks and went to the bathroom and literally wrung them out in the sink. It was like my socks had been soaking in a tub of water for a couple of days. I have no idea what that is, what that means, but that was weird. The second reason, though, I'm convinced all this is something, is because of one of the dreams I had last night. I had all these just horrible dreams. But I had one that was different. Now, keep in mind, I don't dream. This was odd in itself that I would have a bunch of dreams. It would be odd if I had one dream. It was odd because I had so many dreams, and then I had this one dream that was extremely realistic. If I didn't have knowledge of what happened, I absolutely would conclude that it was 100% real. I know it wasn't real because, first, it's a physical impossibility. Secondly, I just so happen to know about sleep paralysis. I know about sleep paralysis because I spent over a month in a sleep clinic when I was about 20 years old because of my terrible sleep disorders I have. I went to a place where they hooked you up to wires and meters while you slept, and they analyzed the data, and I slept there every night for over a month. I learned about sleep paralysis through some other people that were there as part of the study or whatever, and it's one of my biggest fears. It's where you dream something that is incredibly hyper-realistic, and usually something bad and scary happens, and you can't move. It's kind of like a half-dreaming, half-awake kind of thing, and your body can't move. And then usually it's something sitting on your chest, or strangling you so you can't breathe. Sometimes it's called night hag, old hag. In fact, the word nightmare was coined to describe sleep paralysis by, I think it was the Scandinavians. I think they thought an actual horse was involved with the condition. But anyway, my realistic dream, my sleep paralysis, whatever it was very realistic. Just, I'm going to tell you the dream, but just remember that this is incredibly realistic to me. It would feel real to me. Basically indistinguishable in every way from reality. So imagine how frightening this was. So in my dream, I woke up, looked at the clock. It's 3 a.m. I shut my eyes, and I thought about how I couldn't sleep, and I'm out of office for the week, and how I needed to sleep. And then I start feeling a little queasy. You know that feeling you get when you know you're going to throw up? Where your mouth starts watering and puckering, and then my stomach started churning, and it was growling and making weird noises. So I lifted up my shirt, and in the dim light of the bedroom, I see something inside my stomach move. Just like when a baby moves inside mommy's tummy, it kicks its leg or moves its arm or whatever. And I start freaking out, and I jump up and I head to the bathroom so I can see better in the light. And I feel like I'm going to throw up anyway, and that's the place to do it. So I creep into the bathroom, look in the mirror, pull up my shirt, and my stomach looks like it has tiny microscopic waves flowing through it. And then the throw up feeling hit me hard, and it hit me quick. And I tried to throw up, but I just dry heaved into the sink. I moved my head over the toilet, and then I heaved again and again and again. And by this time, I'm just sweating, and it feels like it's 1,000 degrees. And I'm just dripping with sweat. And then I just give it my all. I give it one more giant heave, and it feels like my stomach is coming up through my throat. It feels like my stomach is stuck in my throat, and that there's no way it's coming out, and it doesn't seem like it will go back down. I feel like I should throw myself over a chair or something so I can heave this thing out before I lose oxygen, As I turn to exit the bathroom and find a chair, I catch a glimpse of myself in the mirror. And at first I think there's a big smear of vomit or something on the mirror. Then I thought, I must be hallucinating, because there's something that looks like a morbidly obese salamander tail protruding out of my mouth, like by about 5 inches. It looks like the rear of a giant slimy snail or something halfway down my throat. And that is all it took. I instinctively turned my head towards the toilet, violently bent over, and heaved one more ferocious heave, and this thing came dislodged from my throat. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, what is that? What is that thing? The bottom half looks like an enormous, dark, black, raw oyster with emaciated, useless legs. And the top looks like a stillborn puppy covered in mucus, curled up, premature baby arms sticking out of its neck. It's so gross. And this thing just plops into the toilet, and I gasp for all the oxygen I can get, and I'm dizzy, and I'm confused, and my throat hurts, but I also have this weird sense of satisfaction that I've finally gotten that thing out of me. And while all this emotion is overwhelming me, and my throat feels like I've swallowed a pound of broken glass, or maybe I've had a baby out of my throat, all of a sudden this thing comes to life, like somebody just dumped ice water on it, or used a defibrillator on it. This thing lurches, and it makes this horrible, horrible, super loud, screeching, screaming sound, and then dives right down into the hole at the bottom of the toilet and slithers away. It's gone. And of course, I had no idea what to do. And my body felt like it had just given birth which I guess it had. So I stumbled back into the bedroom, sat down on the bed. I felt like I had just lost 80 pounds. I mean, I was wrecked mentally and physically and emotionally. I just sat there with my head in my hands, sitting on the bed until I guess I fell asleep in my dream. And of course, yes, it was a dream. But unless you've had something like sleep paralysis before, you cannot imagine how real this experience was for me. This was my first time having anything like this kind of realistic dream. And if I had not just vomited up a fish baby, I would have sworn on a stack of Bibles that all that really happened. It was truly frightening. And I'm sure that this was a stress stream built up from all my nervousness about the weird stuff happening and traveling and being away from my parents, then being away from work. And I just let my imagination and my paranoia get the best of me. But I will say my throat was super sore all day. In fact, I'm just now feeling and sounding completely better, which I'm sure is caused by the power of suggestion or something, you know? My wild guess is, and it's only an uneducated guess, is that this dream is symbolic of me finally getting rid of all that negativity. It felt like I got rid of a bunch of, to sound kind of hippie-ish, it felt like I got rid of some dark energy. But today I was on the phone talking to my friend Michael about my dream, and as soon as I was done, he asked if it was sleep paralysis, how did you get to the bathroom, and why did you wake up sitting up in bed, which, by the way, I did. I woke up sitting on the side of the bed with my head in my hands, just like I went to sleep in my dream. But anyway, and he asked me why my voice sounded hoarse, and I thought about all that stuff. Yes, in sleep paralysis, you're paralyzed, always. You're held down, or, otherwise unable to move at all. And I wanted so bad to chalk it up to sleep paralysis, but in the very, very, very best scenario, it was a very bad dream, a very realistic, the most realistic dream I've ever had. And then there's one more thing that happened that really just kind of pushed it all over the edge for me, and I guess you could call this item number 3. Today, I got super fatigued in the afternoon, and I decided that I should treat myself to the very rare treat of a nap. So, I put on some light music in the background, I turned off my ringer and relaxed on the guest bed here at my parents' place until eventually I nodded off. And the next thing I know, I'm waking up in a panic, desperately gasping for air, like somebody had been holding my nose while I slept. I sat up in bed and finally caught my breath and had no idea what time it was, but it was super dark in the room. Super dark. I couldn't even see my own hand in front of my face. And I'm thinking, God, how long did I sleep? And I felt around for my phone, but I couldn't find it. And I looked at the clock, and I guess it was unplugged because I couldn't see the LED numbers. And that's when it hit me. It was not super late at night. It was daytime. And I was blind. I could not see anything at all, not even a trace of light. And of course I panicked. And again, I felt around for my phone. I eventually found it by tracing the charging cable, and I held it up right in front of my face, but still had no vision whatsoever, not even, the sense that there was light there. And I didn't really have any idea what I should do. I didn't know if I should call 911 or just start screaming for my parents. And suddenly everything made sense to me in that moment, oddly enough. You know, the weird stuff happening and the hallucinations and the sudden blindness. I thought to myself, I must have a brain tumor. That's the only thing that could be. That's the only reason somebody suddenly goes blind and has weird stuff going on. And that made me depressed and panicky all at once, which is a really weird mix of emotions when you think about it. You get, all that panic energy, and you have that whole depression thing holding you down. I decided, instead of screaming for my parents, I should find them. So I stood up, I made my way to the door, I felt on the wall, flicked on the lights. I don't know why, maybe out of habit. Of course, that didn't help at all. Still couldn't see anything. When you're suddenly blind, by the way, yes, it's terrifying, but it's also very annoying. It's like having a blindfold on your face and hands tied behind your back, and you're doing everything you can to get that blindfold off, I was just freaking out and disoriented and in an unfamiliar room, and I was shaking. I was shaking so hard I dropped the phone, and without thinking, I bent over to pick it up, and that's when I lost my balance and crashed onto the floor and hit my head on the corner of the old cedar chest that sits at the end of the bed. And it was extremely painful and it was scary, but the moment I hit the floor and hit my head on that cedar chest, boom, just like that, my sight came back. And it was like somebody had turned on the sun. It was so insanely bright. And I eventually calmed myself down and went into the living room to see my parents, but what the hell, man? What is happening? Lately, it's been hard to tell the difference between what's real and what's not. And now, more than ever, I'm happy that I decided to document all this. There's just no way of knowing what's going to happen. So, what started out as kind of a fun diary kind of thing, and remembering weird stuff that happened when I was growing up, has turned into a diary of something serious, and I'm just not sure what that is. I'm not sure what we'll find. And when it's just me, left to my own internal thoughts deep down, I really feel like this is some sort of paranormal event. But it sounds so ridiculous to say that. Either way, I think I have reached the tipping point. I absolutely 100% need someone who knows about this stuff to tell me if I'm being paranoid, am I going crazy, or is this something real? I need help. I need to go back to LA, and I need to immediately find some real help. My friend Michael has been my best friend for years and years, but even with him, ever since I started telling him about what's going on, he's definitely more distant, more hard to get in touch with. In his defense, he does have a serious girlfriend and less time to hang out. And he's a big-time record producer. He works with rock stars, and he's been doing a lot of movie soundtracks. But Michael used to run a club that catered to people who like dark things. So, I'm absolutely positive he knows somebody who could address this as a paranormal event and tell me if that's what's happening. Through that club he was running, he has so many friends who are into occult type stuff, witches, all kinds of religions. I figure that group of people, there should be someone who actually knows what to do. And then as far as me being crazy goes, I already have a psychiatrist, but there is no way in hell I'm gonna go tell him, oh, by the way, I'm haunted now. I'm sure there's a law that would obligate him to have me carted away, so I'll wait on that solution for a minute and just, suss out the paranormal side for the moment. In my heart, that's what I know this is, even though my brain thinks that's ridiculous. The one thing that I'm sure of is I really need help. That's the one thing that I know. One of two things happening. Both are extremely dangerous. So I'll be checking on flights to LA and getting together with Michael as soon as possible, and we'll take it from there. And hopefully that's what you'll get in my next report. Some kind of answer. Anyway, thanks for being here, whoever you are. I do appreciate you listening to this. So, time for bed. Good night, whoever you are.
You've been listening to A Shock in the Dark, an audio journal of a haunting. For a free subscription to this series, push the subscribe button. To get an alert when the next episode posts, push the bell notification symbol. Post your questions or comments to the narrator in the comment section below. To contribute your recorded or personal story for this series, send it in an email to aSHOCKintheDARK@gmail.com. Until next time, as our narrator says, good night, whoever you are.